And I think we're going. Well, welcome to AM Coffee. And, I got a question for you. Has anyone ever thanked you for something that, I don't mean like thank you for opening the door for a stranger. That's pretty common. But I mean, thank you for something that you do normally anyway. I've had my spouse thank me for doing the laundry, which is something I've done for our family for about 20 years, just something I picked up. But every once in a while, she'll like stop and hug me and say thank you. You remember how good that felt? To feel appreciated. Sometimes your children will say stuff. My son has said things off and on like that. It just kind of like make your eyes want to like blow water out of him because he's just so, those are such great times and it made you feel so good. Well, and how would you like to make other people feel that way more often? Well, with me today is Lynette Smith. Lynette Smith, how are you today?
I'm fine. Thank you, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Well, you have an answer for some of this. You have a book, your most recent book. You've written more books, right? You
Yes.
yeah.
My main book, let's say that way,
Okay.
is How to Write Heartfelt Letters to Treasure for Special Occasions and Occasions Made Special when the magnitude of your gratitude is bigger than a thank you note.
See, there you go. There you go. Now, that's such a great concept, and it seems like here in 2020, it just seems like the thankfulness and the just the attitude, a decent attitude towards one another, is kind of missing. So I think it'd be so much nicer if there was more of this. Now, what inspired you to write this book?
What inspired me was back in November of 2008 when our son Byron was going to get married. And we were at the rehearsal dinner the night before the wedding. And he and his bride to be each brought out a framed, heartfelt letter of appreciation to their respective parents. And they had their maid of honor and best man read those letters aloud while they stood by their own parents. And it was so moving. I'll
Mm,
tell you that it was. He talked he talked about what it was like growing up in the family. He talked about the qualities he most appreciated with his dad, and then the qualities he most appreciated with me, and then the values he had learned that he had chosen to bring into his marriage for the future. And he thanked us for all of that.
mm.
And there wasn't a dry eye in the house.
Oh, no,
Hand
no,
over heart, tears were dripping.
sure.
That letter today still holds a place of honor in our home. And I've got to tell you something, Mike. Every time I read it, I'm doing it again.
Yeah.
Every time it has that much power, and it's been 12 years.
Mm.
Wow. And that letter's going to be saved someday when my husband and I are dead and gone. My son will get it back, and I'm sure he'll give it to one of his two daughters, and it will be saved because it will be evidence of what their grandparents were like
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
eyes of their own father. What a neat.
Wow. And it all comes from being grateful of what your parents have done and what people do. We do things for each other all the time that it just kind of gets unnoticed. And
That's right. That's right. And even if we do notice, sometimes we're in such a world. I remember when I was little, there was a little plaque on the wall that said, "The hurrier I go, the behinder I get."
that's
And I
great.
think that's true today in spades. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
people are in such a hurry that they are just flitting from one thing to the next and trying desperately to keep up. And they don't always take time even to say thank
Yeah.
you, much less text it or
Right.
email it or write it in a thank you note or a letter. They
Yeah.
just don't take the time. And here we are all frantically doing things day to day and everything else. And we reach later stages of life and we wonder, gosh, did I really make a difference? I mean, I've tried to be a good person, I've tried to do good things, but I wonder if I've really made a difference because everybody else has been so busy that they didn't bother telling in a lasting way that, yes, doggone it, you have made a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Letters make that difference.
And and you mentioned being busy. I think we all fall into that category from time to time. You can just drive around and see these fools the way they drive, and that obviously they got to get somewhere pretty quickly. But I think I was reading somewhere, it was a lady in Australia that used to work at it's like a hospice type facility where people were there to live out their last days. And she would talk to these people. Sometimes she was the last person that they'd see before they passed on. And these people, one of the biggest regrets they ever had was working so much. It was right there at the top. So I wish I had not worked so much. And it would be great if we could somehow infuse that into our brains while we're still young enough to make a difference with that. Because really the more that you can focus on your family, the more you can focus on the things that are real and make a difference, then the more grateful we're gonna feel in our lives to have people in our lives. And I don't know, it just seems, because I lost my mom in 2005. I lost my dad in 1980. And there are so many times in my life where it's like, I just wish I had one of them to pick up the phone and talk to, or just chat with. And when my dad died in 1980, I was 16. We didn't have that, I was 16. that pretty much suffices it there. But there were so many things I wanted to talk to him about. I look back on it, World War II and what that was like, and the Korean War and all that kind of stuff. It's like, man, I just lost a lot of that. So, yeah. But yeah, being grateful. I think that you have really hit on something that Americans, we kind of miss a lot of that. Telling people how you feel about them, I guess unless it's negative, it's important to say it now, because you never know what tomorrow brings. I mean,
that's it.
Yeah.
You don't want to live in a space of regret. Do your very best to not have regret when you go to bed at night, whether it's regret for your own actions or regret that you didn't tell someone thank you while they were still around, because you don't know how long they're going to be on this earth either.
True.
And what a horrible thing to have to be on your deathbed and think, did I really make a difference?
Yeah.
I don't know if I made a difference. And
Mm,
you don't want them to die with regret. You want them to know they made a difference. My
exactly.
cousin died a few years ago, and she made a heck of a difference. She was a school teacher in sixth grade, and she taught so many students and was such a positive example to all of them. She was everybody's favorite teacher.
Oh, wow.
And when she was in hospice, I wrote her a letter, and I came over a few days before she died. And it was difficult, but I read it aloud to her. And I know that gave her peace, and
Yeah.
it gave her satisfaction in a life well lived. She had to know it on one level, but the fact that people were acknowledging it and realizing, because I said, look, over this many years of a teaching career, you've had this many students, almost all of whom probably thought you were their favorite teacher, and you had these kinds of influences on them, and they went on to grow up, be parents, and instill some of those values in their own kids. And wow, thousands and thousands and thousands of people you've made a difference to, Linda. You're amazing.
Mm.
You know?
11, 12-year-olds are not the easiest ones to win over either. So,
No.
I mean, God bless her. That's fantastic. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, my friend just did a substitute teaching gig for a sixth grade class, and he was like, after about 3 days, he's like, I'm not doing this anymore. So,
Well, there's only two things worse: seventh and eighth grade.
yeah, really. Gee, yeah, my wife worked in an elementary school for many, many years, and I just couldn't do it. My response had always been that on the first day by lunchtime, I'd be filling out a Burger King application, because I just could not do it. I just
I
don't
don't
have
think
the patience.
I don't think I could.
You and I have talked before on another podcast, and you have such a great story about your dad and what he did for you and your family, before he passed. And it's such a great, would you tell us that story? I love that.
Happy to. This was actually November of 2007. he we always had a tradition at Thanksgiving that we'd go pick him up. He lived about 32 miles away, and we'd pick him up Thanksgiving morning and bring him over, and he'd have dinner with us and spend the day with us, and then spend the night with us, and we'd take him back on Friday morning. Well, this time we asked him ahead of time, Daddy, would it be all right if we recorded you telling some of your favorite stories? And he said, why, sure. And he was honored. You could tell he was pleased that somebody cared enough to want to do this.
Yeah.
And so we did that on Friday morning that weekend. And my son was in town from Arizona. So he and I were the audience as my dad told these stories. And we had made a list of 11 different stories that I remembered, at least, that I wanted him to repeat. And so for each one of them, we'd say, okay, Daddy, the next story is about this or that or whatever. Old Tom, your dog you had when you were 12.
Mhm.
And he'd say, okay, let me think a minute. And then he'd say, okay, I'm ready to talk now. And we had this little MP3 recorder, so I'd press the record button. And as soon as I saw the counter advancing, I'd say, okay, Daddy, you can talk now. And he would tell his story. And then at the end, he'd pull a Forrest Gump and cross his arms and say, well, that's about all I know to say about that. And so I'd turn the record button off, and we ended up with 11 stories this way. Very well done.
Wow.
And then we got done with that, and he says, well, anything else you guys want to know about? And thankfully, my son said, oh, Granddad, I always wondered how you met and married Grandma. Now,
There you
my
go.
mother died in 1993, so she was long gone.
Yeah.
And he says, oh, well, let me think just a minute. Then he got it together mentally, and he says, okay, let's go. And so he told that as the 12th story. So we took him home Friday afternoon. Saturday morning, actually, when I got back from that trip, I sat at my husband's computer with Audacity software and edited each of those 12 recordings. I'd take off the part, okay, Daddy, you can talk now,
Yeah. Yeah.
chop it off. And at the end, well, that's about all I know. We chopped that off,
Yeah.
and we had 12 clean stories. And it was great. And I had my husband, the techie, wonderful guy that he is, he duplicated those stories onto 12 CDs. And we were able to give them to my brother, my sister, my niece and nephew, my son, uh, several of my cousins who were my dad's favorite nieces and nephews from his
Mhm.
favorite sister and only sister. And so I composed a little letter to go with each one of those and put them in the mail Saturday afternoon, believe it or not. It was that fast.
Wow. That's very quick. Yeah.
And so that's how we got to share those memories with them. And then unfortunately, the next month on Christmas Eve, my dad died.
Hmm.
Fortunately, we had gotten these stories.
Yeah.
Now, he and we'd had a whole discussion about, I don't want no damn funeral. He's texting. Don't want people sitting around crying. And I said, Dad, it's not for you. It's for the people you leave behind. They need closure.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want people sitting around crying. And we had this discussion many, many times. One time I finally said, well, you know what, Daddy? You're not going to be able to do a thing about it.
What are you gonna do?
And he stopped, and then he busted up laughing. He says, okay, well, then would you do me a big favor and wait a while before you do this life celebration thing you're talking about? I said, sure, we'll do that. So we waited till March 1st, and we had a life celebration. And those stories really were a wonderful addition to that day. My husband had set up something, I don't know, was it called Pro Show Gold? Something like that, software where he could get, we took the 7 stories out of the 12 that were most likely to be of general interest, and he
Mhm.
put them on a screen so you could click on what story you wanted to hear my dad tell. Because he
Okay.
set up this desktop computer at the back of the American Legion Hall with about 4 chairs around it. And people could select a story, listen to my dad tell it. And while he was telling it, there was a black and white photo that had to do with the story on the screen. Like Old Tom, we had a black and white photo of a red setter, like a hunting dog.
Okay. Yeah.
And,
Perfect.
anyway, we had that for each of those stories. And when my dad would finish telling the story in this recording, it would pop back to the main menu again, so you could either listen to another story or walk away and whatever. So that was a great thing at the back of the room. And then at the front of the room, on the big screen that they had on the stage, my husband set up a slideshow for how I met and married Lucille. my mom. And
Sure.
we had all these pictures, the two of them through the decades. And that was just really, really wonderful. A wonderful tribute. And he got to contribute to the tribute by having told those stories. It was
I, I
amazing.
I think that would have made me cry just even months later, that, yeah, they put together a little, it's online. It's from memorial.com or something, but there's a PowerPoint presentation with just old pictures that my wife had put together for the funeral home when my mom died. And just, I can't even watch it. I mean, it's been 15 years. It's still, I can't watch it. So,
Yeah. Well, I've got that thing with my dad's stories sitting here as a shortcut on my computer. Anytime I get lonely for him, I press the button, I let him tell me a story.
there you go. There you go.
I do it
Perfect.
quite often.
Yeah, I think we talked the last time. I asked you if you would decided to put it up on YouTube or anything. We could take those pictures and make it like a slideshow on YouTube. That way, everybody in your family, no matter if they happen to be in Japan or something, could access it.
I had not done that. I've
Yeah.
got some issues I have to work out with YouTube, some technical issues yet.
Okay.
When you mess up a password and YouTube forgets who you are, what do
Yeah.
you do?
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
I've got to get that worked out since you can't
Okay.
call Google and say, "Can you fix this for me?" There's nobody at Google to
There's,
answer the phone.
there's nobody. Yeah. They're all raking in the money. That's all
Yeah,
they're
they're busy
doing over
with
there.
that. They don't care about my little problem. So I've got to get the YouTube thing worked out. And when I do, I'm going to do some good things with it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Because that, those are, technically now that's really not all that difficult to put together. Even I can do some of that. So yeah, it's kind of nice. Tell me about your book now. That was that story. I have never forgotten that story, and we talked quite a while ago. And that's such a great story about your dad. And it's something that, and I keep putting it off, and I know that we shouldn't because we should have learned everything from your dad just going ahead and doing it. But my wife and I need to sit down with the computer and tell our story on video and tell how we met 32 years ago now and just the birth of my son and all that stuff and the emotions. And I think that we don't talk about that on a daily basis. We don't talk about that on a yearly basis. So I think that that's those kind of feelings and those kind of emotions are so much better if they're shared,
Mm.
because who knows what tomorrow brings, like
Well,
we had said earlier.
let me interject just for a moment here. I'm one that's more likely to write down my stories than to tell them, though I could tell them, but I want to show you what I've done. Whoops, that's missing out of it. Hang on.
There we go. Lynette's Vignettes, the memories, philosophies, and recipes of Lynette Maccabee Smith. Very cool. Very
And all
cool.
I do is I just get in the mood to write a story, and I write the story. I put it in page protectors, and it's in my binder.
That's awesome. That you see now, that's the kind of thing you pass. My wife has a cookbook. It just reminded me of that her mom had, and the thing is, it was ratty as all get out. It was from the 50s, but she would never she'd get rid of me before she got rid of that. I mean, it's just
There are certain treasures in life you don't get rid of.
absolutely, absolutely. And I know you couldn't, if you're listening to this on a regular podcast channel, of course you couldn't see what she had just put up. But if you go to my YouTube channel, Mike Summers YouTube channel, you can find it there, or you could go to my Facebook page, which is the facebook.com/AM Coffee, and you can see the video, which I will put up there when we're done. So anyway, that's fantastic. It's a great idea. You're just so full of great ideas. I love this.
I am,
Um,
I know.
I thought of that as it came out of my mouth. That's probably not the good thing to say.
I make the mistake of going ahead and saying it. Well,
That's all
what
right.
the heck? So,
Yeah, life is too short to worry.
yeah, a minute ago you asked about the story on what caused me to write my book, which I'll
Yeah.
hold that up and I'll speak the title for the benefit of those not looking. How to Write Heartfelt Letters to Treasure for Special Occasions and Occasions Made Special. And there's a special interesting, forward by Peggy Post, who's the director of the Emily Post Institute.
Oh, okay.
Why writing these letters of appreciation is a really good idea. But yes, a kind of interesting story. I already told the story about my son, and the letter in doubt was the impetus. it got me thinking after a while, and I mean a long while. I kept thinking, gosh, I wonder if I should write a book about writing all kinds of letters of appreciation. And I kept wondering it. I never even voiced it aloud to anyone, not even my husband.
Yeah.
And I wondered and I wondered and I wondered. Time passed, and it got to be November of 2011. And I was meeting with a friend, a business friend, who was studying something called hand analysis. And she had been looking for guinea pig hands to practice on for her study. And my hands were two of those guinea pigs. And it was relating to life purpose and what you wanted to do with your life. And there would be a print of this and prints of fingerprints, and they would draw meaning out of those as to what your life purpose is inclined to be and what your traits are inclined to be towards it. So she had written me a report that didn't really make an awful lot of sense to me, but we had a follow-up meeting in Noguchi Garden in Costa Mesa. And there she was explaining that everything on my left hand seemed to be just fine, And she says, everything on your right hand is good here, and your thumb is good, and these other fingers are good, but your index finger has an issue. I said, really? And in many words, she told me that she was polite in how she did it, but I interpreted it as, I'm a professional fence sitter. I'm just gung-ho about something.
Yeah.
So it's time for that last step. And that last step, the big finish, is going to mean big change, whether it's big success, big failure, or just some other kind of big change. And at that point, I typically freeze.
Because it scares you. Sure.
Yeah, I'm darn scared.
Yep.
And when she explained this to me, I said, oh my gosh, Louise, there's two things going on in my life right now that exactly applies to. Now, mind you, long since forgotten what the other one was, but I said, in this case, this other one is that I've been wondering for the past at least year and a half, should I or shouldn't I write a book about writing all types of letters of appreciation? Now, this is the first time that wondering got out of my mouth, from my brain to my mouth, the very first time. And as soon as those words were spoken, here came the voice of intuition into my head in a very cool, calm voice saying, your book will be published by August 15th.
August 15th.
15th. And I said, Louise, you'll never guess what I just heard, because she's a spiritual person. We get this thing about the voice of intuition.
Okay.
And I repeated those words to her, and she says, I can't wait to watch this journey. So I knew that voice of intuition knew what it was talking about. So I got to it. And of course, me being the organized type, first thing I did was to create an overblown outline that would be condensed later to a table of contents, but it told me what I was going to write about, decided what territory I'd cover. And I was about 2 weeks into that, minding my own business, brushing my teeth one morning. Here comes a voice again. And it says, how to write heartfelt letters to treasure for special occasions and occasions made special. And I went,
out of the blue.
out of the blue. And I spit out that toothpaste, and I grabbed a notepad and a paper, and I wrote that down, because I hadn't given any thought to a title for this book, but I heard one.
Yeah.
I wrote it down, and then I ran it by about 3 people I knew who were, somewhat savvy about book titling. They said, well, it's long, but it's good. You should keep it. And
you don't have to wonder what it's about.
No, it's right there. Hello.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's nice to be in tune with that voice of intuition. It gives you the affirmation you're on the right path, doing the right stuff.
Sure.
And
boy. And was it done by August 15th? Was it all published?
It was done by August 12th, I'll have you know.
Well, it was by August 15th. That's that's fantastic.
Yeah, because I'm one that's kind of loosey-goosey. Yeah, I'll work towards it. But here I was given a deadline. I went, all righty then, let's do this.
Let's do this. Yeah. Well, I think deadlines is kind of what kind of gives us that kick in the pants to kind of get us moving. It does for me. I'm probably a little bit like you. I have all these great ideas, but this couch is so comfortable. It's like I got.
You ever find yourself looking for that round to it?
Yes, I'll get one eventually. I knew somebody that had one of those on their fridge, as a matter of fact. It was around to it. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, and I have not ordered your book, which I had promised you the last time I spoke to you that I would, but I just haven't. So let's move on.
We might talk. We
Yeah,
might
I'll
talk. You
order
get
something.
me. We might talk. Um,
Now, the contents of your book, you've actually broken it up into sections and you can sell those sections individually. I saw that on Amazon. Tell us about how that is. That's very unique.
well, the whole book, first of all, has three main parts. I'll get to where you're going, but everything has a backstory.
Sure.
The three main parts are, the first part is what applies to every type of letter you're going to write, no matter what. And it's all of 19 pages long, so that you read that. Now you can skip around to part one, which is the special occasions like Christmas and Thanksgiving and Hanukkah and birthdays and that kind of thing. Those things that are on the calendar that
Okay.
you can observe with a letter of appreciation. Or you can go then to part three, which is occasions made special, and skip around to the type of occasion, such as somebody retiring or
Oh,
having a
okay.
quinceañera, or just because they're special, you're going to write a letter, or because they're in hospice,
I
whatever
gotcha.
things that come up in life that you can do a heartfelt letter of appreciation for those. So
Okay.
that's the structure of the book, and then the appendix has some really useful tools, including 15 demographic lists, each one containing 72 of the most positive words, most powerful
Oh,
positive
boy.
words to describe a particular demographic, such as a middle-aged woman, a teen boy, a military service member, somebody religious or spiritual, and so on.
Okay.
So armed with all of these appendices, because there's more in the appendix, but you can create the letter you need to and want to write. Now, what I did afterwards, after writing this book, was to create some themed guides. So there's one themed guide for cultural or religious rite of passage, such as a marriage or a quinceañera or
Okay.
whatever. Um, Another one relates to writing to a military service member specifically,
Okay.
and so on. Another one writing to an older friend or relative, writing to a supervisor or employee,
Oh,
writing to a product uh, creator or service provider, things like this. I've got 6 of them. And they each contain those 19 pages we talked about in the
hmm,
big book. But then after that, it's very specifically geared to the type of letter. Some people only, a book that's a half an inch thick is going to scare the heck out of them.
yeah, yeah.
But a skinny little thing that's about 60 pages long, maybe they think they can do that.
But truth be told, the book is just a compilation of all those, correct?
It is.
Yeah,
Well, the book came first, and then I split things out from
I
it.
gotcha. I gotcha.
So the book is all inclusive. You can use it for anything. Or if you're just too scared of a half-inch thick book, you go and get a little skinny 1/8 inch thick guide and just
Sure.
do the purpose. But if you think I have three purposes, I'm going to get three guides. Nah, get the book. You'll save money.
Exactly. You'll save money. Well, and you never know what's going to come up. So, I mean, and it would be like a reference. It would be sitting next to your Encyclopedia Britannica if you still had
That's
one of
its
those.
purpose. It's just a reference.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not a page turner.
Well, I mean, but it'd be good to kind of have that stuff because you could verbalize a lot of that, a lot of the things you'd learn in there. So, I mean, and
Sure.
sometimes those conversations are things that people remember also. Like I said, because they come up so infrequently, you get people to thank you for things that you didn't expect.
No,
But so the boss one doesn't have cuss words in the thesaurus in there. It's all just okay.
no cuss words. No
Yeah,
cuss.
my son couldn't
Nothing that
use that.
does this. Nothing that does things.
Yeah, my son couldn't use that part then. Well, well, that's fantastic. Now, how would now I know it's on Amazon, but how would people find your book? Where did it?
They can find my book at any of the major online retailers, but also they can get information about it at my website, goodwaystowrite.com. And that website is going to stay good, by the way, even though it's being a little bit redone right now.
Oh, there you go.
So
See,
I don't want to try to give specific direction to specific pages on the site
uh-huh.
because they'll be different. But goodwaystowrite.com will get you there, and it will provide, for example, stories about uh, what other people have experienced in writing or receiving these letters. So it's kind of inspirational. It gives
Yeah.
information about the book, about the themed guides, and so on. And each of them does have a link to send you online to go ahead and buy it in most cases, or to work it out if you want an autographed or inscribed copy, I can sell it to you directly.
Okay. Well, I'd see that's fantastic. You have an email address for that, or do we just that's all goes through your website?
It goes through my website, but anything you want to write me email wise, feel free to do it. Lynette, Lynette, at goodwaystowrite.com.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Now you also have another company. You do copy. You're a copy editor, and you own a company called allmybest.com. Tell us a little bit about that before.
That's correct. That's correct. This business is no, it's 16 years old now. Started in 2004. And what I specialize in is working with book authors and publishers and publishing coaches to two aspects. One of them is when an author has written a manuscript, the best effort at a final draft, I can step in as the copy editor and fine tune that final draft, both in terms of basic formatting, which is officially called document scrubbing.
Yeah.
So I'm a housekeeper.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so the document scrubbing happens, and then the copy editing happens, where I take care of spelling, grammar, punctuation, clarity, usage, and flow. Things that are just going to fine tune that best effort at a final draft. Then they take it to their graphic designer to get it laid out as a book, and the designer produces a PDF file that is a book layout that you can look at on screen. And
Okay.
at that point, the graphic designer says to the author, well, here's the layout. What do you think? Are we ready to go? Are we ready to publish? And the author is going, what do I do besides just read it one more time? And the answer is you check for layout errors, and you check for, yes, reading it one more time in case, for example, you have the in the middle of a
Sure.
sentence or two periods at the end of a sentence. Stupid little embarrassing errors that can sneak through. With regard to the layout errors, this is where another book I've written since then comes in, with the world's most boring title, 80 common layout errors to flag when proofreading book interiors.
Again, there's no mystery in what the book's about.
No mystery. I'm not one to have a mystery. And this is just a 40-page handbook that I recommend every author read before they attempt to look at the layout they've been given by the designer to see if
Okay.
there are errors in the way it's been laid out. Widows and orphans, we've heard those terms, just for example, a single line of a paragraph appearing at the bottom of a page or at the top of a page. That's the most
Oh, I
common.
see what you're saying. Yeah,
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 but you
yeah.
can also have the wrong repeating header. It's for the wrong chapter printed
Oh,
out.
yeah. As a matter of fact, I think I've seen that in some books.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, somebody didn't catch that. And
Right.
so that's the other aspect. That's called reading the proof and checking the layout. Proof reading. I am also a proof reader.
Yeah.
If
It,
someone sends me the PDF layout, I check for layout errors first, and then I go through and I read it one more time, as should the author,
hmm.
to catch the embarrassing errors and get them corrected. So that's what I do at all my best copy editing and heartfelt publishing.
Well, that is those some of those things you were describing would be really easy to overlook. I mean, I think I've seen it on Facebook a while back where they would give you a big sentence in big font and everything. It's read it again, and it'll say, the mouse is under the chair or something. It'll say the mouse under is the chair, and it's like you gloss right over it. Your brain puts it
Fix
together.
things for us.
Yep.
And
So I'm
especially if you're the author and you've looked at your own book so many times, you
yeah,
can't see it.
yeah,
Your brain has filled in the gaps or made amends for the errors that are still
sure.
there. So you need
I
fresh eyes.
I think it's a skill also, though. I mean, because I can read other people's things, and I'm the same way. Now, have you noticed, are your hands more full now than before? Because I mentioned Facebook. You look at some of the Facebook people, the way people write on Facebook, they write the way they talk, and really, I mean, it's more than just using a preposition at the beginning of a phrase or something. I mean, there's some serious faulty English. Yeah, yeah. It's just terrible English.
Some of it happens when they're dictating their words and trusting the computer to interpret correctly.
Yeah, yeah,
And some of it happens because they're in a darned hurry.
yeah.
Some of it happens because they just don't care. Some of it happens because they're blind and they can't see it.
Oh, that's true too. That's true
So
too.
what happens is you decide the importance of what you're putting out there to the public and if it's worth doing right. And to be honest, it isn't always.
Mhm.
But if it is worth doing right, get a second set of eyes or let it sit overnight and look at it one more time before you click send or publish or
Sure,
whatever button you click.
sure. I know just putting up podcasts, I make sure that, I go through it 2 or 3 times to make sure that my description is right. And I've still gotten it wrong a few times. I have to go back and fix it. As a, as a matter of fact, my friend Lynette here sent me an email, I think it was yesterday, or the day before yesterday, saying that the email address that I put on my Facebook page was missing. It was missing a letter. It was, it was missing one letter. I'm like, oh my gosh.
You were going to be on the oddcast instead of the podcast.
Yeah, there you go. That's what it was. So it's always great to have somebody else read over your stuff, especially if you're going to write a book, because that's going to be out there in front of everybody. And that is just so important to make that good first impression, because, you start making spelling errors. If I'm reading something, I see spelling errors, I just stop, because I figure they don't have anything good to tell me.
And that's the thing is you don't want the reader to be distracted from a positive reading experience.
Right, exactly. Well, Lynette, this has been fantastic. And if you're watching us on video, you can see I'm outside. It was a beautiful day here in North Georgia. It's 70 degrees out, slight breeze. It's blowing over my notes here. But, I figure, we're going to do this whenever we get a chance. I'm going to be on my deck, and I'm going to enjoy the weather, and you're going to enjoy watching me enjoy the weather. And this is just kind of how it's going to be. I'm enjoying watching Lynette's office. Is that an office?
Yeah, I like being here, but I think I'd rather be outdoors.
I understand. Well, Lynette Smith, she has that copy editor and publisher at allmybest.com. You can reach her there. And her other website is goodways2write.com.
Goodways2write.com.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, ma'am. You've been a joy, like I've said before. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for being with me. Thank you.
You.
Yeah. Bye. Have a great day.
You too.